Hi everyone, welcome back to Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. In today's video, I'm going to be talking a Women's Prize for Fiction predictions. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name's Alice and I have way too many books. And today I'm not really talking about those way too many books. I'm going to be talking about the Women's Prize. Recently, the Women's Prize announced their first ever non-fiction long list, which was very exciting, and there was such a plethora of great sounding books that I hadn't heard of, which is for me the absolute joy of seeing the long lists of this prize. So the fiction long list is due out on the 5th of March, and I thought I would have a little bit of a go of predicting some of the books that may possibly turn up on the list. I don't know. I'm not feeling very confident about these predictions. I do think that we will see a lot of surprises, and for me, a massive part of the fun is hearing about all these books that I've never heard of. I don't know where the judges find them, but I am happy that they do find them for me and give me them in a nice list form that I can work my way through. Don't really have an awful lot to go on when making these predictions. I will preface this by saying that out of this list that I'm predicting, I've only actually read one of them. This is pretty uninformed, but I did manage to get 3 right on my non-fiction predictions, which I was absolutely amazed by, but very, very pleased. I think I might have got 3 right on the fiction list last year as well, but even if I get one of these right, I will be happy with that. I don't honestly have any faith in my prediction system. I will talk you very briefly through 16 books that I think could potentially appear on the Women's Prize for Fiction list. Starting with some debut fiction. I think we will see quite a few debut books this year. I feel like last year was the year of Barbara Kingsolver, and of course she was the first woman to ever win this prize twice. And although you can't say that the prize affects itself from year to year, I don't think we will see necessarily another winner who is a well-known author who's already won before. But I do have one prediction of somebody who has won before, and also a couple of predictions of people who have appeared on at least the long list, probably even the short list before. But let's start with some debuts. First debut that I'm going to predict is The House of Broken Bricks by Fiona Williams. This was published in January by Faber and Faber. It's 400 pages long, and this is supposed to be the story of a broken family trying to heal and struggling with identity and grief. I think this will make the list because it explores race, roots and belonging, as well as family. I think these are all themes that come up time and time again for the Women's Prize. The second book already in my mind has a connection to the Women's Prize, and that is because I saw the author on stage at the Women's Prize live last year, and that was like my first encounter with this debut author. So that book is The Storm We Made by Vanessa Chan. I've seen a lot of hype for this already, especially considering it's a debut, but listening to Vanessa Chan last year at the New Authors Showcase, I think that this has really strong potential to be on this list. So this was published in January as well by Hodder and Stoughton, and it's 352 pages long. What I've got here is a sample we were given at the Women's Prize. This one centres around Malaysia, and it's set in Malaya in the 1930s and follows Cecily, who has become an unlikely spy, I believe, and then in a separate timeline, I think in 1945, it follows the consequences of her decisions and actions. And I think that this will make the list because it's offering a different perspective on World War II, perhaps one that a lot of people will not have read from before. Certainly I don't know anything about it myself. Been a lot of praise for this book, and I think that this will undoubtedly be on the radar, at least, of the Women's Prize. Next up, I like the sound of Chrysalis by Anna Metcalf. This was published back in May of 2023 by Granta Books, and it's 304 pages long. This has been described as an unnerving, compelling debut novel about one woman's metamorphosis into an online phenomenon. I don't know about you, but that just kind of appealed to me, and I thought that it may well appeal to the Women's Prize. This could make the list because it sounds very sort of the moment, plus it is one woman's story. We know that on the Women's Prize we do sometimes see these books that are centering on one woman. The fourth debut novel that I think stands a chance of making the Women's Prize list is Breakdown by Cathy Sweeney, also published in January, so I think I've probably predicted far too many books that have been published in January. This one comes from Orion Publishing and it's 224 pages. So this one is another one following one woman, and it follows a woman on an ordinary day as she walks out on her life never to return. This is described as a story of rage and reckoning, joy and transformation. And I think this could make the list because Sweeney is already an admired Irish writer, and this is her debut novel. Now, I do have one more debut novel later, but that has a story all on its own, so I'll save it. Next up, we have some authors, 3 authors with this prize, starting with the person who has won this prize before, and that is Anne Patchett. Anne Patchett's latest book, Tom Lake, has been very well received. It was published in August of last year by Bloomsbury, and it's 320 pages long. Anne Patchett has previously won this prize with Bel Canto in 2002, and she has also been listed on 3 other occasions in 1998, 2012 and 2020. This one follows a mother and 3 daughters, as I understand it, in 2020, with mother Lara looking back on her past, and I've only heard good things about this one. So out of any of the books I've predicted here, I do expect this one to have a very good chance. My next one I did find in the library to show you, and that is Let Us Descend by Jessamine Ward, and this was published in October last year by Bloomsbury and comes in at 320 pages. Jessamine Ward was previously listed in 2018 for Sing Unburied Sing, and this book has already been described as a masterwork. It's billed as a reimagining of American slavery set in the American South following enslaved Anise in what is described as a harrowing and yet ultimately hopeful story. Heavy content, but I do think that Jessamine Ward is an admired writer, and I would not be surprised to see this on the list. Next up, we have another absolute veteran of this prize, and she has been listed, I think even shortlisted, 4 times, and I have a bit of a more superstitious reason for predicting this person. So the book is The Wren by Anne Enright. It was published in August of last year by Vintage, and it's 288 pages. Here's my pattern. Anne Enright has been listed for this prize in 2008, in 2012, in 2016 and in 2020. So by that pattern, she is due to be nominated again this year, because it seems that her name comes up every 4 years. That's my logic on this one. I think it's Anne Enright's turn again, and this is described as a generational saga and an exploration of mother and daughter love. I think it will be listed because it has been described as a testament to the glorious resilience of women. Next up, we go into a bit more of a random category. These ones are not debuts and they are not veterans of the prize. And we're starting with the only one that I have read, Julia by Sandra Newman. This was published in October by Granta Books and it comes in at 400 pages. It's the only book here that I've read, and as I've said, I didn't love it, but I do think there's a good chance the Women's Prize judges and everybody else, apart from me, will love it. So this one is a retelling of 1984 by George Orwell from the point of view of Julia. This covers all the main original story beats, giving Julia a past and going into much more detail about how the women of this dystopian world are treated. And I think that that may well impress the judges. So I'm fully expecting my opinion on this book to be the opposite to the judges' opinion. Next up, we have Penance by Eliza Clark. This was published in July last year by Faber and Faber, and it comes in at 448 pages. This was longlisted for the Dylan Thomas Prize this year, and I think it could be considered because apparently it has a clever construction which uses interviews and witness accounts and draws on true crime in a novel about the murder of a 16-year-old in a seaside town. In this one, a journalist is gathering a definitive account of this murder that happened several years previous. This one sounds really interesting to me, and it'll be interesting to see if the judges think so as well. Next up, we have The Vulnerables by Sigrid Nunez. This was published in January by Little Brown Book Group at 256 pages. This one is a pandemic book, and I think maybe we will see a pandemic book on the list because it is our recent history. This one sounds really interesting. The Vulnerables throws together a writer, a parrot, and a college dropout in one Manhattan apartment, and it's said to be both emotional and humorous. My next pick is Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zhang. This could be the dystopian lover in me selecting this book, but it was published in September last year by Cornerstone, and it is 240 pages long. Obviously, I had to include any dystopian fiction I could find, and I think this includes a sort of utopian element as well. It follows a chef in a world where smog has spread and food crops are disappearing. It's largely set in an exclusive mountaintop colony where this protagonist chef can once again experience food. I think this sounds really bizarre, but I also think it sounds like the right kind of bizarre for the Women's Prize. Next up, we have Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. This was published in May of 2023 by Faber and Faber, and it is 256 pages long. I've heard this one is pretty harrowing. I think it could make the list because it's about early motherhood, and it's had a lot of praise here on BookTube especially, and it's been described as very intense and emotional. The protagonist in this is caring for her newborn baby, and I think this is set sort of in the first 3 years of his life, but she is also having very dark feelings. So I think this one sounds very hard-hitting, but I would not be surprised to see it on the list. Next up, we're getting into my slightly more long shot type of books that I may or may not have picked because I just thought they sounded interesting to me. So we have Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austin. This one has only just been published in February by Atlantic Books, and it's 320 pages long. So this sounds like a really intriguing book with a very interesting main character at the heart of it. It's been described as a pitch-perfect exploration of the strange ways we try to connect with others and the power of sharing our secret selves with the people we love. It's definitely a long shot, but I would probably still be interested to read it, even if it doesn't come up. Next, we have Happiness Falls by Angie Kim. This was also published at the beginning of this month by Faber and Faber at 400 pages. I like the sound of the mystery element of this one, but it also sounds like a really intriguing book with a lot of layers. So this one follows Mia, whose stay-at-home father has gone missing, and the only witness is Mia's non-verbal neurodivergent teenage brother. I'm not sure if this is Women's Prize material, but it is a wild card. Getting towards the end now, we have Family Law by Elizabeth Acevedo. This was published in August by Canongate, and it's 384 pages. I first heard about this from a flyer at the Women's Prize Live, so that's my tenuous connection there as to why it's in my mind for this. It sounds like a book about strong women. It has apparently lyrical prose and a generational storyline. I think that it focuses on siblings in the 3 days before a wake, interweaving the story of various family members. So I thought that that definitely sounds like it has a chance. Now, that's 15 books, and when I got to the end of this list, I did have 16 books, but on the way through researching these, some of them just seemed like they weren't actually eligible, so were unfortunately dropped from the list. I had figured out a 16th book, but I was feeling like my list was full of like slightly obvious predictions and slightly out there predictions, but nothing really super interesting and crazy. I was a bit sad about that, and yesterday when I was still thinking about it, I was in the library and I saw a book on the new books shelf that will undoubtedly be ruled out for some reason, and one reason might be that it's not long enough. I think it's probably just about long enough, but it's really hard to say because the lower limit of the Women's Prize is a word count limit, and I don't know how that would equate. So here's my really wild card that I've picked up, and it is also a debut novel, and it's called Top Doll by Karen McCarthy Wolfe. Now, this is 191 pages, so a bit risky, and it definitely has some sort of poetical sections in here as well as prose. So this was published by Dialogue Books in January, and Bernardine Evaristo on the front here has described this as extraordinarily inventive, witty, moving and profound, which is always a good sign. And here's the bizarre part. I think this book is narrated by dolls, and the Women's Prize does have some previous with a wild variety of unusual narrators. So why not? I'm pretty excited to read this. I think I may have to read it, even though I haven't really got time to read a book that may well not be listed for a multitude of reasons. But I think this sounds so deliciously out there. And when I was in the library, I was actually thinking, where do the Women's Prize find these books that I've never heard of every year? Then this was right in front of me and I'd never heard of it, and it sounds crazy. So this is my final shout for this video, but I look forward to seeing if this is as amazingly bizarre as it sounds. So that was my slightly uninformed look at 16 books that could make the Women's Prize for Fiction Longlist. I hope you've enjoyed this video today, and if you have, please do give it a like, and please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments, have you read any of these books? Would you like to read any of these books? Let me know any books that you think we will see on the long list when it comes out on the 5th of March. Have I missed anything? Is there a book that you think would deserve to be on this list, and why? I would absolutely love to hear from you. But if you don't have a comment to make today, perhaps leave me an emoji. Could be relating to any of these books. If you are looking for more Women's Prize content to tide you over until the long list, I will be back at the weekend for our first Plodalong of the year. That's going to be on Sunday at 3 p.m. So do join us if you would like to. The Plodalong is the unofficial Women's Prize read-along that I host with Gemma from Gemma Books and Charlie from Charlie Brooke Reads. So we'd love to have you join us if you would like to talk all things Women's Prize. That's all from me today. Thanks for watching, and I hope very much to see you all again soon for another video all about books here on Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. Bye for now.